Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Nicole and it's time to wrap up the month of April. I don't know how it's May already, but it is, and we're just going to move on from that idea. I've got a lot to talk to you about today. I'm going to be talking about books that I finished, books I didn't finish. I've got a couple of book reviews that I still need to give you. There was a lot. There was just a lot that went on in April. Let me stop delaying and start talking about it. I'm first going to talk about the books that I DNF'd. And guys, there were a lot of them. These are all the books that I had paused. And let me tell you what happened when I went to unpause them, if you will. The first book is An Unruled Body by Anna Jika. I'm not picking this back up because I just don't care. Like, I don't know that memoirs are actually my favorite thing to read, and Ladies of the Club. And yeah, if you've been watching my channel since last summer, you're probably wondering, Nicole, what are you still doing with that book? I really hadn't DNF'd this book. I really, had paused it, and I'm really going to come back to it. Lies. Those were lies. I tried. No. It was a very quick reminder of why I put this book down. Boring. The next one I was kind of surprised by, and that was The Pillow Book. I really just wasn't interested in finishing this. It's The Tale of the Bamboo Cutter and Other Fantastic Stories. I'm not that into sci-fi. I think if you are, you might want to check this out because it is a cool concept, but I just decided I'm never really going to come back to it. The Matchmaker, it's just so slow and I just really don't care. And I'm just realizing I'm never realistically going to come back to it. Because I think that's what happened with all of these books, was I was like, if I put them back on my bookshelf, when would I really take them back off? When am I really actually going to want to read them? It's never. And then the last book was another real surprise, and that is March by Geraldine Brooks. I was just like, maybe I'm just not in the mood to read it right now. And I was like, I don't think I'm going to be in the mood to read it ever. And so for all of these books, it's not because any of them I think are bad books. Some of them I think are actually really fascinating or really well written, and I think other people would really enjoy, like these three particularly, but they're just not for me. And so I don't want to keep putting them back on my shelf indefinitely. So those are all going to be unhauled. The ARC will be unhauled to a little free library. Don't worry, I'm not selling it. So after that fiasco, I then realized, okay, I still have like one more book of my TBR, or maybe this was before that I could read, and that was Fathers and Sons. This I did not read. I didn't really start. I read a chapter, and I just really realized, like, I do want to read this, but I didn't want to read it then. Is this about to become a book I paused? No, not really, because I don't feel like I started it with the, like, idea of finishing it. Oh, there's a part of me that's like, if I put this on my bookshelf, am I ever going to read it? Yes, I will. The next time it gets on my TBR, I have to read it or unhaul it. Hold me to that. Okay, and then we're getting to the book that I DNF'd. And guys, of all of these books here, and there's quite a stack of them that I picked up to read and didn't, this was the book that I wanted to like, that I wanted to finish, that I wanted to be like, I don't know, part of the group of people that really like the book, because a lot of people like this book, and I thought it was so boring. I just couldn't. It was the longest, almost, but not quite 300 pages of my life. I couldn't make it to page 300, and I read long books, and it was the bee sting. I don't know what happened. I didn't like it. I tried annotating it. I had a temper tantrum about the fact that I wasn't enjoying it. I mean, it was a struggle to make it to page 200. I think I made it to page 298. And I told myself, just read 2 more pages, so at least it's an even 300, and I didn't want to. And you can't make me. I just, like, people love the characters in this book. They love the multiple points of view. They think it's the greatest, like, 14-year-old characterization ever. Is it? Is it though? Because I really didn't like her. I think I have problems with 14-year-old characters. I don't know. And then I did look at reviews, and a lot of people did feel like the section that I was in, which is the POV of the mother, is an interesting backstory, but everybody felt like the book dragged at that point. And oh, did it. Oh, yes. It was dragging on the ground like somebody caught in the desert trying to make it to the oasis. I mean, it was not good. And it had nothing to do with the fact that there were no periods, because there were capital letters every time the sentence should have ended, which made me go, then why not throw a period in there? But anyway, it did cause sort of a interesting reading experience, but it was just too slow. I wasn't that invested in the character. The mom's POV, I felt like we got a humongous, maybe 100 some odd page backstory about her life that honestly was just too long. It took way too long for us to get her backstory, and I didn't enjoy that. And by the time we came out of her backstory, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that was just a flashback. I'm sorry. It didn't work for me. That doesn't mean don't read it. You can see there are a gajillion reviews of people who absolutely love that book. I'm just not one of them, and I refuse to finish it. So, yeah, that'll probably be on hold at some point. Okay, so that takes care of all those books. That just didn't work out. And we're going to move on to the books that I finished since the last time I did a weekly reading wrap up. So one of them is Pachinko. This was a viewer pick, so I will be doing a standalone book review on it. In fact, I've already filmed that, and that will be coming out, I don't know, this month, next month, I don't remember. I think this month. So you can look forward to that if you want to hear my thoughts on Pachinko. Let's see. And then I have these three books that I finished since my last reading wrap up. So let me give you guys some quick reviews on them. So I read A Lovely One in April. This is a nonfiction memoir, ironically, of Katanji Brown Jackson. But in this case, I really enjoyed it. I gave this book 4.5 stars, which I think is probably the highest a memoir will ever get from me. And the reason I think I liked this one is that I just felt like it's narrated by her. I listened to it on an audiobook. I think that helped. And she does a really good job of just covering her early childhood to her adult life and all the things that made her her without getting too personal and like oversharing and making things awkward. I actually thought it was a fairly inspiring book about working hard and just going after your dreams, but at the same time, like how difficult that can be on a day-to-day basis. I felt like she was very real without being overly dramatic, which I feel like can sometimes happen in memoirs, as well as the oversharing that frequently happens in memoirs, and I don't like. If you want to know more about Justice Brown Jackson's, sort of career and life aspirations, I think this is a great book to start with or read. And I have to say, high in this book for me for sure was her husband and her relationship with her husband. It was just so sweet and heartwarming and so supportive and wonderful. And if there was any low for me and this book, I would probably just say that it did suffer a little bit towards the end of feeling like it was just a little too long and going on a little much. But ultimately, like, I can't say anything bad about it. I really did enjoy it. And I think that's about as much as I'm ever going to enjoy a memoir. So take that for what you will. Just yesterday, when I was before filming this, I finished listening to The Overground Railroad by Candacy Taylor. I do still need to go back and look at the pictures in the book because, like I said, I was listening to this on audiobook, and this was a really, really good nonfiction work about the Green Book, which was a travel guide for African Americans during Jim Crow period, all the way up through, I think, the late 70s is when the last one was published, either then or the 80s. I'll put on the screen. But I really enjoyed just learning about the Green Book and how it was published, as well as hearing about the different safe places and businesses that it cited, as well as like its development over the course of years and how different historical events impacted it. And yeah, it was just a really well-written book, really interesting concepts that she brings up and topics that are discussed in here. The photographs in here are rendered so well. At the end, she has like a whole index of businesses and sites that still exist that you can go and visit. She talks about how some of them are on private property, so to be aware of that and look that up ahead of time. And so I think that's really interesting. And then probably one of my favorite things in this book was she also had a call to action where she's like, because I have to admit, when I read this book and listened to it, I could only listen to so much of it per day because there were so many things in here that just made me mad. Not at her or the Green Book, but just at like Jim Crow period and people's behavior and how it's too similar to stuff that goes on today. And so every now and then I just had to be like, that's enough for today. Get back to you tomorrow. So that said, because so many heavy topics are brought up in here, I appreciated that towards the end, she has a call for action. It's kind of like, okay, if this has made you feel some sort of way, like here are things that you can actively go out and do to make a change, to make a difference, to start like impacting things, to make the world a better place. Very, very practical things. So I am definitely going to be making a list of those and adding them to my to-do list and working on doing those things myself. So that is something that I love in a book like this. I didn't write it down next to me, so I don't actually remember what I gave this book. So I will put my star rating up on the top. I would say this is a great book for anyone who wants to learn about the Jim Crow South in America, but from a very different perspective, to learn about travel in the US as an African American, all the way back from Jim Crow to current times in a lot of ways, and to just hear more about all of that situation, Black businesses, what type of people would support African Americans during this time period and beyond, and just all the things that kept people back. It's not a depressing book at all. There's actually a lot of really inspiring and heartwarming messages in here, and I think there's a lot of good examples of how communities can rise up to continue to support everyone, and especially those who are currently not being supported, whoever they may be. So I do recommend this book to basically everyone. And then the final book I have to review is The Tartar Steppe by Dino Buzzati. I love this book. I'm just going to say up front, I gave it 5 stars. This is a work of philosophical fiction that I don't feel like, unless I do a search for it, that I hear a lot of people talk about. And really, I think more people should talk about this. And in fact, I think this would be a really fascinating book to teach in high school. This book kind of reminded me of The Alchemist, but going in a very different direction. You have a young man whose name is Giovanni Drogo. He has just graduated from military academy and he has been stationed at a nearby fort in the mountains. And he is looking forward to his career now that he is a lieutenant, but he has a mix of emotions about it. I think it's very realistic in that sense, where he is sort of feeling the loss of leaving home, but he's also looking forward in what he feels like is a rather mature way to his first station location, but he's not sure how to feel about that because he's never seen or really heard anyone talk about the fort. And then he arrives at Fort Bastani and he realizes that he's gonna have to make a choice in life, whether to stay at this very isolated location where there's not a lot going on in hopes of having a great military career and realizing his dreams of having a purposeful and meaningful life, or he's going to have to go back to the city in the valley and sort of just live a ho-hum day-to-day life doing, the normal things and just, doing what everybody else is doing. So I just thought this was a great book that just explored coming of age, the realities of life. It looked at the hardships that can come when you feel like you're maybe or maybe not going to reach your dreams, the effects of time and place on people's psyches. It goes into monotony and just, sort of living a monotonous life, and talks about hope in those situations. So many good things, so much symbolism, so much imagery, really fascinating. And I just loved that the central idea in this book and the theme of this book could be applied allegorically to just about anything in life, as well as it could also be just a very literal discussion about military life. And I would love to hear more people talking about it and reading it. And yeah, I feel like I'm not even doing it service because I'm trying to keep my review of it concise just because I've got so much to fit in this video. But anyway, I recommend this book. I recommend it to anyone who, one, is interested in, what military life would have been like in the early 1900s. I think this is, it was written in 1938. But it is set in the Tartar steppe or near the Tartar desert. And I think anybody who's interested in that time period and military fighting and military life on sort of a day-to-day basis would find this interesting. If you like philosophical fiction that makes you think about life issues, particularly the purpose and meaning of life, this would be a good book. And if you like a story that features a character trying to make that transition from like youth to adulthood, I think this is another good book. It's also kind of a coming of age story in general, but instead of starting in his childhood, you're sort of starting in his late teens and going into his late adult life. And I just appreciated every aspect of this book, and I definitely can see myself rereading it in the future. Okay, and finally, the last two books that I have to discuss that I was reading in the month of April are my year-long reads. I, per usual, worked my way through Year of Wonder, and I will put up on the screen what my favorite song of the month was. This book is a book that has a collection of classical music, one piece for each day. This was my favorite piece of music this month. I found somehow that this month didn't have as many favorites as I've had in other months, and there's a couple of people who are also working through this book with me on Discord, and we were all kind of discussing that we were all having a similar feeling, and we don't think it's actually the music pieces itself that are being selected. And what we're thinking is happening is that we're now at the point where we know what we like, and so we have more discernment when each piece comes on. Like I can say for myself, I have a huge bias towards Baroque music. I love a piano solo, and I love anything that like prominently features the cello, and that my least favorite pieces tend to be classical vocal pieces, as well as large orchestra pieces. Like it's not that I dislike them, they're just not my favorite. So I'm finding now that when they come up within the first couple moments of a song, I'll go, this probably isn't going to be my favorite, but I'll listen sometimes but I'll listen anyway, and sometimes it really will surprise me. I also, during the month of April, read about 200 pages or so out of Clarissa. That was all the letters that were written in April, back and forth to everyone, and round we go. April was a really fun time in this book because the character Lovelace, who is basically the rogue man who is a libertine and a rake and all those 18th century terms, basically a bad guy and a womanizer is what he'd be called today. He features a lot more prominently in April. You get way more letters from his perspectives, which are on the one hand kind of amusing, but ultimately really disgusting because he's just a horrible person through and through. And but it is really interesting characterization to just and plot device to bring him more into the story. I am really enjoying this even more than I thought I would, and we are making some good progress, guys. We are now on page 542 in this book, so we are about here, which now that I look about at it, isn't even halfway through the book. But it's going well, and I'm enjoying reading this and talking about it with other people. If you would like to join me and others in discussing either of these works, I will put in the description box below a link to the Storygraph read-alongs or the Discord pages as appropriate. Okay, finally, let's get into the April stats, which I know for some of you will mean that you're going to click off because you really don't care, and that's fine. But for those of you who like to see all the graphs and charts and that kind of thing, let's talk about it. I have up here for you on the screen, hopefully, my Storygraph summary of April, or my April wrap-up as they call it, and I'm excited to see that I am still holding strong at reading around 4,000 pages a month. That was not a goal for me for this year, but that seems to be what's happening. I love that my two 5-star reads this month were both shorter books. That was interesting. And I thought it was interesting that the fourth book that they chose. And I love that my average star rating was 4.22. Really nice and high, and I'm not gonna lie, I think that's partially because of all the books that I refused to read. Speaking of books that I read, however, here they all are. Here's all the covers of the books that I read, as well as the star ratings that I gave each. You can see that I had quite a few 4-star reads. I only had 2 books that were in the 3s, and those were 3.5s. So I actually think that's not too bad, since those 5-star reads would kind of balance them out in the end. Overall, the books that I read this month and finished, I thought were all pretty good and were all solid reads. And honestly, I think the two that got 3.5 stars was partially just because they were surrounded by some other heavy hitters. And then finally, you can see that these are all the books that I worked on this month. You can see that I have paused Fathers and Sons, which I feel like is dooming it to be DNF'd one day. I did actually officially DNF the Bee Sting, and you can see the other books that I'm still working on. Ice Trilogy is technically paused, but that was just because it's the omnibus of the 3 books in the series. So that one I feel confident I will get back to because I will finish that series. Now, you may be wondering why all the other books I DNF'd aren't on that graphic, and it's because I actually DNF'd them before I even decided to officially start reading them again. So I never told the story graph that I was currently reading them, so I never had to say I was DNFing them, if that makes sense. Hopefully it does. Ultimately, what did I learn by looking at my wrap-ups this month and at like the pile of chaos that happened? I think I learned that I need to stop pausing books, which again is making me wonder what I'm doing with Fathers and Sons. But maybe that'll be the last book I put on pause. But I think at the end of the day, I need to realize that if I don't want to finish a book, then I am probably not going to want to finish it later. So in some ways, I don't know that that pause feature is actually serving me as a reader well. So I may in the future just pretend it doesn't exist and either be currently reading a book, finishing a book, or just flat out DNFing it. All right, let's move on to some happier stuff. Let's look at my bingo board from hell. And I question whether this is happier because the struggle is real, guys, to actually get the numbers on this board correct. I don't know why. Okay, so here is my bingo board from hell for 2025, created by Literary Diversions. So I've updated all the numbers, but instead of talking about what the exact numbers are this month, I'm just going to talk about some observations I've made about areas that I probably need to pick up the pace on. So we are in the 5th month, which means that for anything that has the number 12 or higher, I really should have read at least 5 books in that area by now. So for example, when I look at the underdog books, there are 12 that I'm hoping to read this year, and I've gotten to 0 of them so far. So that's not good. Another area that I'm not on track for are viewer recommendations. I was hoping to maybe get to about one of those a month at the beginning of the year, but as the year's gone on, I'm realizing that every other month is probably a bit more realistic. So I think I might actually need to lower that number. And then the final area that I feel like I'm way behind in is my 25 and 2025 books. These are the books that I most anticipated wanting to read this year. I recall last year, I think halfway through the year, I ended up updating that list because I started realizing maybe these aren't the books I'm really looking the most forward to because I'm not picking them. So maybe in June, I'll do one last ditch effort at trying to get some of these books off of my bingo board, and then I might have to reassess these categories as part of my mid-year freakout tag. That's my plan. Hopefully I'll remember it. And then the final challenge that I have to update on is my 52 book club reading challenge, and there will be links in the description box below to both of these challenges, both the bingo board from hell as well as the 52 book club challenge. And I'm just going to quickly go through, as I have been in the past, and talk about what the new books are that I have added on for the various prompts in case you are trying to find books for these prompts as well. So for space number 8, I added in The Marvelous Wizard of Oz, which I'm realizing is wrong because I'm now seeing for the first time that it's also in space 3. And though the rules in this reading challenge are pretty loosey-goosey, I personally am trying to complete the project or the reading challenge with no repeats. So I need to find a different book for number 8. Number 9 is a new book that I added, and that is My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You She's Sorry, and that was the book that I picked for Set in Winter. 12 was Has a Moon on the Cover, and for that I used The Alchemist. I promise it does have a moon on the cover, even though on this graphic it has one on a sun, what looks like a sun on the front. If you look at the back of the book here, there is clearly a moon on the cover. So sun on the front, moon on the back, it counts. Number 39, which has an epigraph. For that, I used The Eighth Life. For number 41, which was cover font is a primary color, I used Ice Trilogy. Part of the font there is a primary color, the actual title. And number 47, I also added on, and it was for the prompt, I think it was blue. And it just had to be a book that when you recalled it or thought of the book without looking at it, you would possibly say, oh, I think it was blue. That's it for the 52 book club. I do kind of feel like it's going to be harder for me to come up with books for those last couple of prompts. So I think in future months on my spinner wheel, I might actually start putting those prompts on the spinner wheel as opposed to putting 52 book club on the spinner wheel, because I think I'm going to have to start actively looking for books to fit those specific prompts that I have remaining. But I've finished 81% of the challenge so far, which is pretty impressive because we're only 5 months into the year. But again, I think those last couple of prompts are going to take me the rest of the year to actually find books for. So anyway, those are all my stats and this and that for the rest of the month. I have right here other books that I reviewed this month. I did this month come out with my standalone book review of The Women. Thank you for everybody who watched that video, left thoughtful comments, and gave it a thumbs up. And yeah, it was a busy month for reading. I don't know how I got all these books in here. I read 9 books this month, but somehow they really took up quite a bit of space. So this is everything that I read in April. The Ice Trilogy, which is right above Lovely One, I can't point to it. I only read the first book of 3 books in there. So, but yeah, so that's how my reading month went. I've got a ton of books here with me because I still have this huge pile over here of like all the books that I just DNF'd. It was an interesting reading month for sure. Even with all of this, I still had 2 days this month at the very end where I was done with all my reading and read nothing, because I do that sometimes. So that's it for me. Let me know. Forgot. I have opened up a little bookshop on bookshop.org. They allow you to do that as an affiliate, which I now am. And what that means is that there is like a little storefront on bookshop.org that belongs to me, or that at least I represent. I don't know how to actually phrase that. But anyway, there's a little bookshop that you can go and visit that I'll be creating lists for. And what I'm working on right now is I've created a little 5-star reads list. So for the year of 2025, if you would like to purchase any of the books that I've read that were 5-star reads for me, I will include the affiliate link down in the description box below, and that will take you to my little bookshop. You'll be able to see the list of all the books there and purchase them if you want to. And it's a fun way for you to easily find the editions of the books that I was reading, and it will actually give me a small commission and help support my channel. And the thing that I love about bookshop.org is that you can connect bookshop.org to a local independent bookstore near you, or any independent bookstore that you know of that uses bookshop.org, and it also supports that local independent bookstore. So it's a win-win all around, and you get, some amazing, fun, good reads. So that's it for me. Let me know what you read in the month of April, and I will talk to you next time.